Well, this week, the University of Sydney's US Study Centre is hosting a conference titled Low Carbon Transport on the Move. Its focus is the future of low carbon alternative fuels.
Dr. Susan Pond is an adjunct professor in sustainability at the University of Sydney and the chair of the conference. She joins us now. Dr. Pond, thanks so much for dropping in.
Pleasure.
Let's look at more broadly what you're looking at. One of the things I understand is around battery use, and these batteries that can be recharged, they're used for the home now, but looking at potentially using them in cars and in planes. How likely is that?
Planes less likely than in cars. What we're looking at the conference, as you said, is low carbon transport on the move. So we're looking at three areas. One is the alternative fuels, and they can be broken down into two areas. One is renewable electricity, because we want to lower the carbon footprint, and the other is renewable liquid fuels in the form of gasoline, diesel or jet fuel. If you look at the figures there, in Australia we have about 6.5 million commute every day, 6.5 million commute. About 10% of us get public transport. Most of us go by car. So from the point of view of batteries, we're talking about electric vehicles, a battery storage of renewable energy in order to charge those electric vehicles so that we can accelerate the rate at which we decarbonise our transport system. At the moment, every household, the carbon footprint of every household is quite high, and about 42% of that is our transport, getting from A to B, which is incredibly important for our lifestyle, for our freedom, for our economy, but it is at a price. So if we can reduce our carbon footprint for our liquid fuels, for our electricity by increasing the use of electric vehicles, and thirdly by becoming much more efficient. So that's where some of the really cool technologies come in, like sensors and linking car parking spaces, for example, to our automobiles so we can book them instead of driving around for 30% of our trip looking for a car park. Driverless vehicles or autonomous vehicles, which will take out the human factor of our driving and make us much more efficient. So what we're looking at the conference is how some of these really cool technologies, which are linked with policy in the US and particularly in California, really coming to fruition, coming to commercial scale and coming into the mass market.
Now, in regard to cool technologies being there, which is one thing, but with consumers and convincing them, say on that issue you raised in Australia where most people rely on their cars to commute, to get around, as opposed to shared public transport, yet the argument you'll often hear in this country, no matter which city you live in, is, well, the public transport system's so terrible you can't rely on it, I've got to use my car. How do you convince both authorities to perhaps improve public transport and convince consumers to get out of the car and share transport?
Well, the consumers are voting with their feet at the moment. The younger generation, surprisingly, is less likely to get a driver's licence than the older generations, and there is an increase since about 2005 in the use of mass transit. The problem in Australia's cities is they're spread out a very long way, and there are a lot of people who have no choice but to get in their cars. So for those commuters, what we need to do is make their car use more efficient, give them the option of having alternative fuels which are not going to interfere with their engines or with their cost, of course, because cost is a very sensitive issue for commuters. We have to drive a long way. We have to deal with the fact that Australia is very car dependent. 75% of our trips are by car. So we will not shy away from that, but of course, you have to move on all fronts, move the migration to mass transit, and we can see that happening in Sydney and around Australia's cities now, which is very heartening. Move our mass transit onto renewable fuels and move our car users onto renewable fuels or batteries. So Tesla, for example, last week, I'm sure the ABC ran a few stories on it, is talking about what they call a power wall, which is a battery storage at home. The home would be powered hopefully by solar energy. That energy would be stored, the electricity would be stored by the battery. You drive your electric vehicle home, you plug in, you refuel it with renewable electricity, and therefore the carbon footprint for the whole household has dropped from the point of view of transport from 42% of the household CO2 emissions down to a lower figure, which is what we want to achieve.
Okay, Dr. Susan Pond, sounds like a fascinating conference. Good luck with it all on Thursday, and thanks so much for dropping in today.
Thank you.